Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch, and I'm thrilled to have you here today on WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. I want to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving week, and hopefully you have some wonderful plans coming up over the holiday. This show is for those wanting to learn more about creating financial wellness, and we will be taking different life cycles and we're going to explore them both financially and emotionally, because personal finances are usually not about the money, but rather they are about the emotions associated with your finances. Although we may be fairly general in our discussion, we would love to hear from you to make it more personal and relevant. So you can call in, you can reach me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial, or you can post your comments or questions on Facebook, YouTube, or wherever else you might be listening to the show. So much happens during a divorce. I think everybody knows that every person's divorce is different. Everybody needs to understand there are so many considerations that you need to take into account. And knowing how each decision you make can impact not just yourself, but other people, especially your children, can be quite daunting. If you ask any parent, do you want to screw up your kids? They're going to obviously give you a resounding, are you crazy? No, of course not. Unfortunately, too often, there is so much going on, and the stress that an individual feels can distract them from understanding the ramifications on their kids. And this is not intended, but it happens. Being aware of what is going on and being deliberate in going through your process can have such a positive impact if it's done right. Today, we have Holly McClain joining us to help us navigate and coordinate not just our emotions, but actual actions so we can protect our kids instead of hurting them through this very trying process. Holly, it is a pleasure to have you on. I just want to say also a little bit about her. Holly is a certified life coach, which is a taxing program on its own, has also been through the National Association of Divorce Professionals Certified Divorce Specialist Program. Holly, it is a pleasure to have you on the show, and thank you for especially this topic, but getting up, I think probably before the sun did today to join us. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Yes, I am from sunny California, so it's a little early over here.
So I'm going to ask if you can share just a little bit about your background so people understand a little bit more about who you are as well.
Yes, of course. My journey started in the education system. So I was in education for 19 years. I started out as a school teacher, and then I went back to school while I was teaching and got my master's in counseling and counseled for about 10 years in the school system, middle school and high school students. In 2017, I decided to add a life coaching certification to my credentials. And from there, I eventually evolved from working in the school system to having my own practice and working specifically with those going through the divorce process.
So you've kind of seen it from all angles, it sounds like. And as we said, you're a certified life coach that can help people in a lot of different areas. And I have no doubt you've been asked this question more than once. What made you choose to focus on divorce?
Yes. So originally, when I went through the life coaching certification program, I was married. And then after going through divorce and getting past some of that healing where I had some perspective, I decided this is the transition that I want to support people through. This is what I want to support them in walking through and processing, because it's so interesting, Hirsch. That specific transition, though it can be so overwhelming and so emotional, it is very ripe for a beautiful comeback. And so if certain aspects and things are dug into and unearthed and the process is gone through and participated in a healthy way, there's a lot that can really come out of the process when you have finished.
I have to agree so strongly with that. We have so much negativity in our lives going through this process, and I've shared with a lot of people that, the very first blog I ever wrote was called Divorce is Awesome, right? And people weren't so thrilled with the title, so I did change the title. But the whole gist of that was this creates an opportunity for you to change the negativity into a life that you now get to choose and to work with. So I love that you see it that way. I think obviously there's a passion behind it with the experience that you've had as well. And sometimes people don't always understand what they're going through. I mean, we are going to focus on getting through divorce with children. Before we focus on the kids, though, as I said, it's important that people understand what's going on, understand their situation. And it's important to talk about what people go through themselves when they go through a divorce so that they can then take care of their children as well, understanding where they are. What do you think are a couple of the stumbling blocks that people need to be aware of when it comes to going through a divorce?
I think it's tricky with divorce because we feel that we can go it alone, or we can talk to friends, or we can talk with family to process and help us get through this time. And it's really important to get some perspective from a professional, because our friends and family, they love us. They are also seeing things through their own lens and their experience. And if it's your mom or it's a brother or a family member, they're putting their layer of emotion on top of what they're trying to support you with. So this can be tough. And oftentimes, as a person going through divorce, when you're communicating with loved ones, you're taking on their energy and you're taking on their emotion around what's going on, which is kind of compounding what you're struggling with. So having the opportunity to talk with a professional, and that could be someone at your place of worship, that could be a therapist, that could be the school counselor, and you can communicate with them from the parent perspective as well as from the perspective of your student, a life coach, or having someone to help you process your emotions. Because the big piece here is this is one of those transitions that's laden with emotions. But at the same time, we're also asked to use our brain and make major decisions for our family moving forward that could last potentially a long time. So the brain functions very differently when all of the emotions are flowing and we're flared up. So being able to learn how to process those emotions so that we can tap into our brain when we need to use it to get us through the transition is really key.
And I would add to that, it's very difficult. You need to be judicious in who you solicit information from and how you take that information. Your family wants the best for you, clearly, but are they equipped to really give you what you need, right? Because they might be speaking to you in a feel-good manner. They want you to feel good and be encouraged, but they may not be objective like a professional would be. The other one that I always caution my clients is don't speak to somebody who's been through a divorce just because they've been through a divorce. They may not be over their divorce, and you don't need that negativity or that bitterness in your life. You need positive people and objective people who are going to tell you the truth, I think, as well. So
exactly,
I think that professional is enormous in being able to really understand the situation you're in and where you can go with it, and to help you look beyond the divorce, because I'm sure you've heard this also more than once. I just want this to be over. Yes, you do, but there's a lot more to come.
Yes, and there is a lot of planning and strategizing that needs to happen, and we need to tap into our brains to do that. So we've got to find the right place to put the emotion so that we can do that when we need to.
And people who can objectively guide you there, who know how to do it and have done it before. Because sometimes, we want things and we negotiate in ways that just can't happen sometimes. So understanding the process, understanding that objectivity, and understanding, somebody who can come in with the creativity of experience is an important piece as well. And talking about looking forward and moving beyond, how do you help people overcome these overwhelming feelings and to move forward?
Well, there's a couple different parts. The first things first, you have to get that story out, and you want to share that, like you said, with someone who's impartial. So that would be your coach or your therapist. Getting your story out and getting that out of your body is the first thing that you need to do. And you need to have a safe space to do that versus worrying that you're going to offend someone or you don't want to tell part of the story to mom or dad, etc. So getting that out is key. Then what happens, at least with the coaching process, is we look at what is this story that you're telling, because we live in story. And so we want to look at the different perspectives of what's going on and how we're going to move forward. Processing emotions is big. So I teach people how to process an emotion. The last thing we want to do is keep that emotion inside of us. Our bodies are built to process emotions. The happy ones, the tough ones, we bring them in and then we emote and we let them go. And that could be crying, verbalizing, whatever needs to happen to move that energy so that we have a healthy body and we can function moving forward. And then a lot of the process includes as well a roadmap. What's to come? What's coming down the pipe in terms of divorce? Because when we look forward, for those of us who've gone through a divorce or in the middle of a divorce, we're looking into the abyss of nothing or confusion. We don't have a master plan. Things are unfolding as we go. So learning to be comfortable in that space and then learning to trust ourselves to make the right decisions for ourselves and our families as we move forward. And then, of course, the rebuild. What's next? So planning your next chapter.
And, you know, one of the things that I do with clients, which I think is so important that I'm hearing here, is sometimes through our marriage, especially the longer the marriage, sometimes we lose who we are as an individual. I think, you know, we lose what we enjoy. We've now done it as a couple. We lose our individuality, and reclaiming that and learning that is a process. And, you know, what we were when we were 20 versus what we are when we're 50, let's say, or 40, that in itself is something that needs to be relearned. And it's a very difficult thing to try to figure that out on your own when you're going through all the other stuff and the emotions and wanting to take care of your kids and, you know, financially scared or whatever else there is. So being able to have that objective person to walk you through that process and help you understand things and help you understand and identify those priorities again, I think become very, very important as well.
They do. And it's interesting because I call it a remembering and also a new start. So when we are in relationship, there's pieces that we put aside for the collective as we move forward in partnership. And so when we are no longer in partnership, there's a huge component that is a remembering and looking back at, okay, who was I and what are some of those pieces that maybe I left behind that I want to take with me moving forward as I progress. And then also, what are some of the newer parts of me, because I'm a different age now and I'm in a different place now, and what do I love? And so there is a remembering and a learning as well that happens.
And this, I could go on a tangent and take the rest of the show to discuss, which we will have to have you back to have this discussion. But I'm going to get back to our topic, and I'm sorry, I took us a little bit, and not that it's any less important. People need to understand that. And hopefully it gives them a little bit of hope because there is a positive outcome that can happen. But I'm going to get back to the kids because kids are usually our biggest, pull on our heart more than anything else. And so I'm going to ask you, when it comes to kids, when our children, as much as we love them, we also make mistakes with them. So what are some of the common pitfalls, if I can put it that way, that you see when it comes to supporting children through the divorce process?
First things first, you have to model for them and support yourself and take care of yourself the way that you are wanting to take care of them. So you have to have an outlet for yourself and get the support that you need, processing your emotions to help you heal along the way. So once you've got that piece managed and you've got a support system for yourself, when it comes to the children, keep in mind they need to emote as well and they need to express emotions. So one of the bigger pitfalls that I see is when a young person has a feeling or a thought and they're sharing that feeling, the adult is putting a judgment on the feeling. So, oh my gosh, don't be angry, or you're so angry. We want to allow them the opportunity to feel the feelings, the happy feelings, the anger, the frustration, the tantrums. We want them to get that emotion out of their body and process it. So giving them an opportunity to do that without judging the feeling.
I think that's huge. I know you and I in the past have spoken also about don't lean on the children for the support. Find the support elsewhere, because that's not fair to them, because often we put them in the middle of everything as well, and that just never bodes well for the child. It's a lot of pressure that they don't need, and they really don't deserve to be put in that situation in many ways.
Yes, that's a big piece of the puzzle as well, because there is a difference between allowing your child to express their sadness and commiserating with them. And we don't want that, because there's that fine line where we're almost putting our feelings on the child. If we're both in this pool of sadness and, creating this big snowball effect, you want to be able to put aside your feelings at the moment and allow them to have that pure feeling, versus jumping into the pool with them and swimming around in the sadness and the upset and commiserating together.
Right. And as you said earlier, no one wants to be angry and nobody wants to be sad, right? But I think we do need to validate those emotions. We want them to be happy. We want to create a happy environment for them, and we want them to be that way. But to shut down their emotions, I wouldn't want somebody to say to me, you shouldn't be feeling sad, or you shouldn't be angry. What do you mean? I am angry, right? I think children are exactly the same way. And if anyone should be supporting them, should be their parents. It doesn't mean you can't show positive things that are happening, or things that they can kind of go towards to make them happier. But shutting down or judging those feelings, I think, can be quite destructive, if I'm reading this correctly.
As humans, we need to feel the rainbow of emotions, all of them. And anger specifically gets a bad rap. And what anger is actually doing for us is it is a protection mechanism. Anger is supporting us in creating healthy boundaries. So understanding the different perspectives on different emotions, the joyful, high energy emotions are not just the best emotions that we should be feeling. We should be feeling the sadness. There's a grieving process through divorce. So we want to allow the children the opportunity to grieve. The anger will pop up. The sadness will come up. And we want them, as well as yourself, to be able to feel that array of emotions, because if not, we're just holding it in or stuffing it down. And we want to remember that the body is used to process an emotion. And sometimes I have clients say, I don't want to go down that path because I will just end up crying and never stop. An emotion is processed for no longer than 90 seconds at a time. So you'll notice, if you think back to when you've been pretty hysterical, there is a pause after the 90 seconds of tears or emotional upset, and your body does know how to naturally process all those emotions.
And I will say I am a complete convert in that I tell my clients all the time, listen to your body. Your body will tell you things. And I used to be one of those people who used to think I've said it on the show before, this weird hippie stuff. When you do self-care and you listen to your body and all the rest, and I am sold. When I went through my divorce, that was such a changing point for me. Your body will tell you a lot of things that you need. Listen to it. And you know what? Be good to it. Let those emotions out. Holding on doesn't help. And I love that expression, by the way, the rainbow, that spectrum of emotions. I like that a lot. We do have to go to a break. I will be right back with Holly McClain, and we will recap what we've spoken about, because I cannot believe how much we've actually covered already. But we will be right back. Before we do, sorry, Holly, please can you share how people can get in touch with you?
Yes, you can find me on my website, hollymcclaincoaching.com. That's HOLLYMCCLAIN coaching.com.
And that's all one word. So go there. There's a lot of great information. And you can also reach out directly to Holly through the website as well. We will be right back. Hello and welcome back to the Financial Wellness Hour. We're on the goingsolonetwork.com, and our topic today is divorce. Will I screw up my kids? And I have Holly McClain here helping us navigate both the emotions and some actions to do. Just to quickly recap some of the things that we've spoken about. I did not get to write them all down. She's shared a little bit about her story, that she has been through a divorce, and that is one of the reasons why she is helping others today in choosing to help people through divorce. Understanding your situation, your process, and how individual it is to let yourself feel that rainbow of emotions. I love that. I'm going to use that. I've stolen it already. There are stumbling blocks, and you kind of need to be aware of them from a personal perspective, but also for your children, the common pitfalls that you might see, and how to support your children through that, behavior changes that might be happening. And we're going to go straight through. That's going to actually lead us kind of into our next question, which we are very attuned to our situation sometimes. And because of the stress and not being at our best under stress, we sometimes don't always focus on other people. So we're not the same, as we've said, and through a difficult situation makes it even harder. Holly, what are some of the behaviors or changes that one should be attuned to in order to gauge how are my children doing through this? Are they facing any challenging emotions, or what are they experiencing that maybe I should be attuned to?
Yes, some children tend to go inward, so you'll notice that they're quiet or they're retreating to their rooms often. This can be something that's fairly standard with teens to begin with. So if you notice a pattern in them disconnecting from the family or family time or retreating to their rooms, that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is the child that acts out or maybe has trouble sitting still in class or has trouble at school. So you're either going to see them go inward or some external expression. Any changes in eating or sleeping is something that you want to take note of as well.
So that's quite a range of things that people can be aware. And someone going through any stressful cycle like a divorce can miss, and I'm using the air quotes, some easy cues to be able to see how their kids are doing. Supporting your children and their emotions through a divorce and the divorce process is really, really important. I know that there's some tested tools that you're aware of. Can you share some of those tested tools to help children, and how do they help process those emotions in a comfortable manner? Because not all kids are comfortable with that or even know how.
Right. It's tricky because we want them to express and process these emotions and get things out and talk to you or talk to a professional. So one of the tools that I use is called Name It to Tame It. It's very simple. When they are able to name or express, put a name to an emotion that they're feeling, it helps take that anxiety away from them. We can do that as the adults as well. A lot of the time, they or we will be spinning or feeling a certain way or agitated or aggravated. If we take a moment to write down what it is that we're actually feeling, or solicit from the child, what are you feeling? What's going on? And support them in naming what that emotion and feeling is in their body. Essentially, that's a way for them to let it out. Very simple, name it to tame it, getting them to talk about it. And again, you want to make sure that you're in a position where you're not judging their feeling. So if they're feeling frustrated or they're angry with a sibling, etc., let them express that anger without having commentary.
Interesting.
So that's one tool. My second tool, which is actually fun, it's great with the little ones. I've used it with adults as well. It's called a mood pie, where essentially I tell the little ones, we're going to bake a mood pie so that we can get an idea of your mood and how you're feeling. And we draw a circle on a piece of paper, like a pie.
Right.
And then they share with me the feelings that they're feeling. And most of the time when we're having a feeling or an emotion, it's not just one. It could be anger with a little bit of frustration. There could be some other emotion mixed in there as well. Maybe some, there could be a little bit of joy in there. So the rainbow of emotions once again. And so what you want to do with them is to have them share with you what they're feeling. And then we divide those slices up in our pie. So that way you get a nice idea and they get a nice idea of where they're at. So that pie might be 3/4 anger and 1/4 sadness. Or that pie might just be a sliver of sadness with some other emotions mixed in there, but it will help you understand where they're at. And then also they can understand where they are going and where their emotions are too.
I like that a lot. You know, one of the things somebody that a client of mine had done was they had very young kids, you know, I'm talking like 2, 3, 4 years old. And I don't think they knew how to express themselves. So helping them express themselves in itself was a big piece of this, but also was very beneficial. And they actually put together like just a piece of paper and they cut, you know, happy faces, sad faces, angry faces from the internet and posted these pictures on the page. And then they could say to their kid, point to how you feeling. Let's see how many there are, right? And it became almost like a little bit of a game because for, you know, 2 or 3-year-old, now we are identifying things, we counting how many emotions do you have, and you know, but it helped them identify. You were saying about the name it to tame it. If you can't express yourself as a young kid, I think it becomes very hard to name it and then to tame it, right? So this was their way of helping their children to kind of get through some of these pieces.
It's almost a form of art therapy, which is very helpful if you have a child that can visually express if they don't want to speak. So they can draw you a picture of
Right.
what they're feeling and what's going on inside. There's another tool that I use as well, and it's from a book called, let's see, I have it here, Permission to Feel. Mark Brackett is a professor and researcher out of Yale University, and he wrote this book on how to guide children through feeling their feelings. And his team had researched and created what's called the mood meter, and you can look that up online. It's Mark Brackett's mood meter, and it basically gives you a meter of the different types of emotions that you're feeling. So oftentimes we forget and think that there's just anger and sadness, but there's also frustration and excitement and other types of emotions. So he lists all of those emotions from the high energy emotions like frustration or anger to the low level emotions like sadness. So energy level and then also pleasantness. So excited could be a high level emotion with a high pleasantness, and maybe comfort is a lower energy emotion. So with your child who is able to express more clearly and can understand, this is usually middle school through high school, they can take a look at the mood meter and that can help prompt them to identify what they're feeling too.
So I'm going to throw out a plug here for you. I think for parents, it's very difficult sometimes to work with their children and help their children in this way. I mean, you've just thrown out a few amazing tools, quite honestly. I think I wish I had known when I was going through my divorce some of these because, you know, I have 3 kids and they certainly had emotions. I would encourage, reach out to Holly, explore these more, understand how you can help your children. Because if you can help your children through difficult times and be strong for them, I think that is, we talked earlier about role modeling. I think that is a wonderful way to role model for your children. So please do reach out. We'll come back to some of the things that you do and help people. But I want to ask you, you know, I think often we tend to want to keep everything very private, especially at the beginning when the divorce is starting out. We want to keep it close to the chest, so to speak. And children react differently through a divorce. In fact, can have 3 children in one home going through this divorce. They all react differently in themselves, let alone, you know, people outside of the house. Can you share a little bit more about maybe tapping in? You mentioned earlier about your school and the school support. Can you talk a little bit about tapping into your school counselor, the support they may be able to have and what's available through that?
Yes, one of the most unused resources for parents going through divorce is their child's school counselor. Most schools across the US will have a counselor either on staff or within the district that you have access to, or they'll have an administrator with counseling background that can support you. So by tapping into your child's school counselor, that's another pair of eyes that can help you while your child is at school. So I used to be a school counselor for 10 years. So I know the ins and outs of what we can do and how we can support. So I'm excited to share what you can actually receive by working with the school counselor. So first things first, your conversation with your school counselor is confidential. So you share with them everything that you think is pertinent for them to know, and then you give them permission to share further with teachers. So what you can do is alert your school counselor. Oftentimes they have a group. Counselors run groups on school campuses at the high school level and middle school level most of the time. And it's very common to have a group for children who are going through the divorce process. So that could be something that's available for starters.
That's great. And one of the things I hear a lot, and one of the things I work with my clients is to help them keep the costs down as much as possible. And I'm not a fan to say, well, don't see a professional. Professionals are very, very important. I always tell people you need to build your professional team, your emotional support team. All of this is very, very important. But these are the kind of tools and insights that Holly just shared now, and there are others that really can help you reduce the cost, because a divorce can be expensive, but you don't have to go bankrupt through it. There are other resources like this, through what we were speaking about earlier, some of those tested tools that you can help your children move forward to process things, and it doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg to be able to do it, which I think is wonderful as well.
Right. So if you don't have private health insurance that would cover therapy sessions for your child, oftentimes your counselor, your school counselor, has information on local resources, therapist referrals in your local area, as well as your school counselor. Though they are not a therapist, they can meet with your child and have weekly check-ins, for example. Call students in, ask them how they're doing, grade checks. So your counselor at the school site is coming from an angle of counseling support in relation to education. And of course, when you're going through something at home or something emotional, it does tie into your child's education. So they may be able to support you that way as well, or have a district resource of a school counselor that covers the district that can come in and meet with your child on a weekly basis if that's something that you want. Another way that the counselor can be supportive is to alert teachers confidentially that your student is going through this change at home, and for them to keep an eye out and alert the counselor or call home if something comes up. If there's a behavior issue, or if they notice their grades and their scores on their assignments are shifting a bit, then they can keep you in a loop. So essentially it does take a village of support, and you have that support at the school system as well.
And I think if you tap into someone like your school counselor, if grades start to dip, instead of the teacher taking that much longer to figure out what's going on, they can react quicker and support your children quicker as well, I think.
Absolutely. And there are some logistical pieces as well that the counselor can help with from the school site perspective. Going through divorce, you might be living in separate households, so your student might be going in between. Oftentimes, you can get an additional set of books to keep at one parent's house, and then the student can have their traveling set of books, because oftentimes students would come in and say, I left my paper, my assignment at my dad's, and my book is at my mom's. So you can help them with the coordination and the organizational piece there. And then as far as getting alerts from the school, you want to let them know that you would want emails sent to both parents when it comes to progress reports and grades and school announcements, so that both of you are in the loop.
I think those are great pieces of information, because most people I don't think are aware of what their school can do for them as well. And everyone has their own style. I'm going to ask you explain a little bit to everybody listening. How do you get the process started? Somebody calls in, and obviously at that point they're aware that they need some help, some guidance, some support, however they're looking at it. How do you help them start to move forward?
Well, first we have a complimentary discovery session. So that's a 45-minute session where you download and you share with me where you're at, what it is that you might be looking for. Oftentimes we'll dig into what have you tried in terms of a shift or a change, or specifically what you need support with. And then I will share my assessment, because I have clients that come to me early on in the process where they're not sure what their next steps are or how to go about that, or they're in the middle of it and they need divorce, or it's post-divorce and they need the support to move forward. What's next? How do I create my next chapter? So the first piece of the puzzle is getting it out, getting your story out so we can see where you're at. And when it comes to this particular process, there are two pieces. There is, you are here and we want to get you there, which you're defining. And then we're putting those steps and pieces together so that you have essentially goals. But this is a nurturing, supportive process. It's not similar to goal setting when you're going through executive coaching, because I used to think before coaching, I thought, oh my gosh, someone's going to, be putting me in a position where they're pressuring me or stressing me to move forward, hit goals. It's not that type of process. The other piece of that is going inward. Therapy and coaching are a little bit different. And when it comes to coaching, the premise is that you are knowledgeable and you are your best resource for what works for you and your life moving forward. Your coach is guiding you to tap into those things and your wisdom. So we work together as a thinking partner when we need to, and we're doing some planning, but also to help you dig in and really take a look at where you're at and where you're going. And there's a lot of different pieces in between, but I would say one of the big components is teaching people how to trust themselves and trust their own inner guidance as they move through this transition.
And that is so important, because going through a divorce, there's ever a time in your life you're going to doubt yourself. That's the time you're going to doubt yourself. I think this is wonderful. I'm going to ask, we've got to start wrapping up a little bit. So you work with people across the country, individuals, workshops. Talk a little bit about all of that. And then unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up today's show.
Yes. So I work one-on-one with clients, and I do work actually internationally. So via Zoom, remote, so we don't have to be in the same city or the same location.
That's wonderful, because that the other piece to that is they might be local, but if they go on vacation or something like that, they have access to you all the time as well, which is great. And before we do wrap up, I'm going to ask again if you can just share how people can get in touch with you.
Yes, my website is the best place. You'll find links to my social media there as well. And also a downloadable PDF with some great tips for you too. It's www.hollymcclaincoaching.com, HOLLYMCCLAIN coaching, COACHING.com.
Thank you, Holly. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate you getting up literally at the crack of dawn. And our children are just so precious to us. And I encourage everyone listening, reach out to Holly, get professional guidance. That it's nice to be engaged in your children's life, to role model for them, to identify your priorities and work through them. And these are all different things that Holly can help you with. You kind of only get one chance to do this when you're going through your divorce. And Holly, again, thank you for shedding the light that you did, going with your rainbow analogy there, but really for sharing those insights, which I think are invaluable and so helpful and very practical, that people literally can go right after listening to this and start with them. I am Hirsch Sermon, your host for the Financial Wellness Hour. Please reach out to me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That is lifecycle.financial. You can reach out for me with questions, or if you want to reach Holly McClain as well, our guest today. I do want to thank CC Schatz, my producer, for making the magic happen behind the scenes. I hope everyone has, in the US or whoever is celebrating, a wonderful Thanksgiving. Have a safe, happy one. And I look forward to my next show and having you join me there. The next show is there life after divorce? The question that I'm sure a lot of people are asking. Thank you again. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and I look forward to the next show.